start with the APPs, and there's 13 of these APPs. APP1, so this is about the open and transparent management of information. So what do we need to do? We need to have, we've now got practices and procedures. Who loves practices and procedures and rolling them out? We've got to put some practices and procedures into our business, some more, about how we manage this personal info. So we've got to have systems to ensure that we comply with all of these APPs. And if the credit reporting parts apply to us, we have to have systems that make sure we comply with them as well. Also, we've got to have reasonable steps in place and a process to be able to deal with inquiries or complaints about compliance with these APPs. The other big thing now is we have to have an APP privacy policy. That's mandatory. We've got to have this privacy policy, and there are, unsurprisingly, a bunch of things that need to go in the privacy policy to tick the right boxes. So, for instance, the kinds of personal information that your business collects and holds, the purpose that you collect and hold and use the information for, or that you disclose it for, how a person whose information it is can go about accessing that information, how they can complain about you, and what likely disclosures you're going to make to overseas recipients of that personal information. It's broader than that, but that gives you an idea about what's got to be in the policy. So we all need one of these policies, and we have to make sure that the policy is available to essentially all and sundry. So we've got to have the policy. Practical terms, that means we need to have the thing up on our website, and if someone asks us for our credit policy, our privacy policy, we need to be able to give it to them. So we've got to have this policy. We've got to make sure it's available. So let's bring all of this back to the real world. What does this mean for us, and what do we need to do to comply? Well, one, to be able to make sure that we're complying and our businesses are complying, we actually need to understand what it is we need to do, and we need our staff to understand what they need to do so that they can comply. So there's this knowledge development aspect to it, of course, and that's why we're all here today. Then we need to have some practices and procedures that we put in place to make sure that we're complying and that our teams are complying with what they're required to do. We, of course, need a privacy policy as well. How's that, the way that we've, I suppose, identified as the easiest way or most effective way to tick these boxes, one, in terms of that information, having a good handbook there that rather than someone having to trawl through the 200 pages of the Act and the 75 odd pages of the code and work out how they fit together and then explain it to everyone in their teams, having a handbook there that can be used for any training purposes or people can refer to. So having a good handbook there and then having a privacy policy that actually sits out what those procedures are, because you're killing two birds with one stone. We need to have the privacy policy anyway, so have those procedures laid out. Okay, so having that privacy policy in place and then having a mechanism so your staff can get easy access to information. How does this cross over with credit information? If you're a credit provider, which most of you guys will be, and if the information that you're dealing with is credit information, then in addition to the APPs, there's a credit reporting policy that needs to get put in place as well. So rather, they would go hand in glove as well. It would essentially do the same thing. That policy, if it's done the right way, there are, as you can imagine, a heap of regulatory boxes that we all just need to tick in terms of disclosure and consent and for any number of different things under the legislation. If you get those two documents right in the first place, it's going to cover most of your other, or a heck of a lot of your other compliance requirements as well. So getting those good documents in place is really key to being able to just satisfy what you need to do under the Act.